And so, even like with my grandkids, like my wife's like, you're managing them. I was like, yeah, I probably am. Because, I want them to know that like it's a choice. Life and attitude's a choice. And if you stay in a bad spot, why?
Yeah.
Why? You only get one trip on the planet, right? So you got to enjoy every day and make the most of it. So that's just
See, I
always
think,
been the way I lived.
I mean, I think that's interesting because I think that to some extent with leaders, I think it might be easier to maintain that attitude or not, or at least maintain the appearance of that attitude like when they're in the work environment. And so you weren't going home and punching in walls or anything. You could
No.
maintain that going forward. Yeah.
No, early days probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the job. It's not like the jobs don't stick with you when you go home. They obviously do, and
Yeah.
especially when we went through the recession together.
Yeah.
And in the car business, and that was a tough haul, but we made it through it, and that was one of my prouder moments.
Yeah.
That we kept the team together and we went through what was a really difficult time, and we kept the store profitable and we kept everybody employed.
Yeah.
And we weathered that storm. So that took a lot of, that built up a lot of confidence in me that I can handle a lot.
Yeah.
And so to me, most things since then have just been different challenges, but I try to hit them with the same approach. It's like, well, you remember that one that was like, we weren't going to participate in this economy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was my speech.
Right.
Let the rest of the world deal with that. We'll do this. And I think that's that attitude part. You got to have that. That gives you an edge.
It's funny that you say that because that's like a running joke with people that work for. Because I'll be like, well, Rick will tell you we can't afford to participate in this economy. Never mind the fact that we actually exist in this economy. But you're right. It's how you frame it, and it's your mindset. And I think that when I mentioned that, I could stay on in the bit like in at work, and I didn't always have the energy like when I got home, which that's kind of unfair to like our support system, to
Very
our
much.
partners. And I think I've sort of figured that out as I've aged. I've become better at that. So you've led teams, then you've managed organizations, or
I am kind of like the entire opposite of what Rick was just saying because I was adopted at a young age into a horrible situation, and all I could think about until I kept saying, when I get old enough, I'm going to have a different life. When I get old enough, I'm going to have the life that I dream of. And my dreams were all from television and magazines and what I could see, right? So I
Yeah.
kind of made all that up. But I've never, I don't enjoy managing people because I have expectations of them. I never learned that skill. It takes a certain kind of person to really be a leader.
yeah,
I'm a terrific mom, and I think my friends would call me a terrific friend because I know when to call with and keep a good balance about when you connect with people. I've known people for 35 years. I might not have seen them for 10, and I'll call them out of the blue.
yeah,
So for me, what Rick said was absolutely right. It's a choice.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to take a class on creating your own life when I lived in Seattle in 1983. And that was the ticket. I took a weekend-long course, and I said, okay, now I can make it up any way I want.
yeah,
I know recently I shared with you about the Quantum Capitalist
Yeah.
book,
yeah,
and all these authors from the 40s and 50s that I've studied, Ernest Holmes and Florence Scovel Shinn, and then that rolled right into, I was in sales for a long time, so I did, not just Tony Robbins, but before Tom Hopkins, everything I have fed into my brain is exciting to me.
yeah.
And so I want to turn it into a great life.
In some ways, I feel like in just the last 5 years, I've started to sort of piece together who I am, like what's important to me. I think, I don't think that's uncommon for people. I think a lot of people don't. I was sort of forced to do it based on what was going on in my relationship with divorces and things like that. But I have just now recently started to think in that way, and I realized that when I started doing real estate, you would see these videos that people would produce, listing agents would produce, of like these $2 million properties, these beautiful like aerial shots, and you would actually look at it, and the agent would not be the listing agent. Okay, it would actually be somebody who just had access to the key. They went in and they put their deal together, and I was like, man, this is just all a show. But then all of a sudden I was like, this is just all a show. And I have control over like what that show is that I choose to present. And so now I'm sort of in a situation where I've decided, okay, I am just gonna, I've had these great mentors. I'm reading all these like great books, getting all this information, and so much of it is basically just like starts at mindset. This talks about how much control you have. And so it's sort of like frustrating and convicting sometimes when you realize how much agency you actually have in the matter, because it can kind of be like humbling to take the stories that you've told about your situation and realize, wait a second, that's all BS because I had a part of it. And so for me, I've enjoyed the fact that, well, I've figured out, yeah, I've got to make the decision, right? And I just have much more control than what I would have thought. Now, I wish I would have figured that out at 18 or 20. I mean, Rick, have you always known this, or is this something that you've developed as you've aged?
Well, I look at it like I didn't realize it at the time, but like I played football from 8 to 18. I wasn't anything beyond that, no college or anything. But that entire time from when I was a bantam league till graduating high school, I was a quarterback.
Yeah.
And, you realize that's a natural leadership spot. You don't realize it at the time. I'm just playing football. But I realized that, if you want the guys to block for you, they got to like you.
Yeah.
They got to respect you. They got to want to, play with you.
Right.
And then, when I went in the service, I was a squad leader and a platoon leader, and it's like those weren't things that I volunteered for. Those were things that were assigned to me because of the way people gravitated towards like if we were running and people were lagging behind,
yeah,
I would fall back and try to pull them up, right? That type of stuff. And it just did it because I wanted those people to have their own right mindset. You can do this. It's not as hard as you think.
Yeah.
My dad told me when I went in, he said, listen, it's all a mind game. When you go into boot camp, and they're going to try and break your will more than your body. So you've got to be strong-willed. And that, to me, I was already kind of that mindset. So that was playing in my head every time, they were getting into us.
Yeah.
But I also realized that, like you said, it's a game.
Yeah.
It's a process. Everything's a process. So, and then when I got in the car business, it's just natural. I started driving a parts truck and putting away stock, making $6 an hour, and, ended, at the top of the game for me that I wanted to go. People ask me, and I've had companies ask me, you want to take over market directors and things like that, and that stuff entices me. Like, it sounds really tasty, but I love where I'm at now.
Yeah.
It's a whole different lifestyle. To your point, I like it. So I don't want to go back that way. In fact, I was mentioning my thing this year has been to keep a personal financial statement, an income statement.
Yeah.
And to make sure that my net worth is growing, even though, I've chosen to take less earnings to have more time with my, expanded family now with 4 grandkids. So, those things I keep focused. Is like, just because I'm doing something different doesn't mean I can't be at the top of that game. So I'm working my way to that. I'm in a whole new world, being an instructor, a trainer, a consultant, a moderator, executive life coach, that type of stuff. I mean, it's a different world, but I love it. It's like made for me, I feel.
Oh, as you were saying that, I was thinking all of those things are made for you. And one of the things that I've realized, and again, this was like sort of a humbling thing now that I no longer manage people, I'm not a good manager. Like, I think I'm a good leader. I think I can be inspirational. I can like get the room going. I don't want to have to hold anybody accountable to any of that stuff. I mean, I don't want to hold myself accountable to that type of stuff.
Well, your history lives on, because in the classroom.
Yeah.
I tell a lot of Robert Beal stories.
Yeah.
I think that you brought an energy to the showroom that made that job.
What not to do.
This will be a real.
No, I think you brought an energy to the showroom that made that place fun. And I think, you need that. If it's stuffy, and the fact that you could attract people, that shows that you probably have more leadership than you thought.
Well, I don't think, when I say leadership, like I think I enjoy leading. Like I coached flag football for my son a couple seasons ago, and I told the other coach, I was like, can I just do like the halftime speech and the pregame speech and be the cheerleader? I don't want to have to like hold any of these kids accountable or even know what the plays are. And it seemed like a pretty good balance. I think that's fun, and I think that's the other thing about it is when you talk about the things that bring you joy, when you talk about the different things that like you pursue, how much is fun a part of that?
Oh, right at the top.
I mean, skateboards, it sounds like it's going to be pretty fun, right?
I have my own skateboard story, by the way. But.
So one of the things that I'm I'm outlining right now how to teach this concept. That's what it is, take it or leave it. It's a concept about how to live your life. And I wish somebody had talked to me when I was 17, 19, 21, that it goes by so fast. And on top of that, you think you have to go the programmed society's way, telling you how to do it. But for me personally, it was always like freedom's at the top of the list. I'm divorced from my son's father because security was at the top of his list.
Yeah.
And here I am, the one that wanted to move and travel and try new experiences and live different places, but that wasn't for him. So
Yeah.
it's not my job to change him. It's my job to be honorable to my own self and say, okay, what are we going to do here?
Yeah.
And we laughed and cried about all of it. But the truth was, as Rick said, it's one life, goes by really quickly. So I kind of want to get on my soapbox and say, what are you waiting for? Your life spirit,
Yeah.
the sooner you identify that, which is what you said, you're starting to realize what is your DNA?
Yeah.
What is the soul of who you are and not just what you want to do, but what you're called to do?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily very easy in our culture and our society to figure that out. I think that's a challenge, and I mean, and now I'm going to talk from personal experience, but as nobody set me down and talked to me about, hey, these are the things you need to
Exactly.
be thinking about in a marriage or in a partner or at any stage of life. And I sort of look at it now, and as I talk to more and more people, I get the sense that everybody's just making it up. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that in a negative way, where everybody's doing the best that they can. And a lot of people don't have conversations with people. So John Blank.
Mm-hmm.
So John Blank is a friend of ours who's a financial planner, and I had a conversation with him a couple weeks ago, and we were just talking about
Cousin.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. we were talking about how people just are intimidated to ask the questions, or they assume that they should know it, and that they're going to come across, look like idiots when they ask the question. But it's not just financial. It's just it doesn't matter what it is. Health, anything. We're fed all of this information, and it's just sort of assumed that we figure it all out, we put it together, and we function. But what I'm finding is I think everybody's trying really hard, and some people learn some important lessons, what are they about, what is important to them earlier than others. And I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you need to know how you expect to finish,
Yeah.
so that you know how to play the game of life. I think it's really important to,
What do you mean by expect to finish?
do you see yourself on a remote island, with 12 other people, and you want to be that isolated from the planet, or do you see yourself in a real urban environment, or do you see a huge family, or do you see yourself being a lone wolf? I mean, everybody's different, and I
Yeah.
think that's the big part's purpose. If you wake up without purpose, it's a pretty crappy day in
Yeah.
my book. I think you got to wake up. I have trouble sleeping because I cannot wait to be awake. At my age, I think that's what drives me. I mean, I sleep 6 hours a night, and that's a good night's sleep.
Right, and then
You know,
normally
four's
starting at
cool.
7 o'clock,
Nine.
This is gonna be, okay.
9, I may not answer your text at 7, but at 9 p.m. I'm winding down, but I'm up at
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, that's true.
And I read every day, I work out every day, and now I'm getting into drumming and a year into that, and I got to do that every day. And I'm a big discipline believer.
Yeah.
If you want things to happen, you got to make them happen, and you can do anything. Honestly,
Yeah.
if you put an hour to anything a day, right? If you want to learn a new language, put an hour into it every day, and guess what? In a couple of years, you'll be speaking multiple languages. There's a lot of things, and I always admire people that have that mindset. So that's one that I work on. Got to wake up with a reason to wake up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely get that. And I know that, so the weather here recently, so we were snowed in for 2 days. And what I've figured out about myself, especially since I moved from cars to mortgages, I have got to be in front of people. I will go stir crazy. 48 hours. I love my wife. She is great. I can spend all the time in the world with her, but I have to be out. And so, which is nice because that's one way for me to actually do my job as a lender. I'm supposed to be out talking to realtors, talking to people. And so I just spend my entire day trying to find people to talk to, and which ultimately kind of led to us all being here. but you do have to, I think a purpose is important. And, you know, and one of the challenges I think with some young people today is the fact that there's so many options that you're almost sort of like paralyzed by what you could do. But I mean, what do you feel like your purpose is, Suzanne?
To teach.
Yeah.
I've known it all my life, but I haven't dedicated to it. I talked about being a teacher before I became a hairdresser when I was 19,
Hairdresser too.
but I couldn't make any money being a teacher.
Just
I did
based
ultimate.
just based on the jobs that you said you've had, I would think that you were like 125. I don't know how you do that. Anyway, sorry.
That's a compliment because I embrace life so much. And I've always been this way. I guess I planted all those seeds when I was a kid that, wow, you can just do anything you want to after this. So I had that attitude going in, but I love the idea of discipline too. It took me a while, not very long actually, because I realized that discipline had a payoff. And I like the idea that discipline to me equaled freedom. And it also, I had a healthy attitude about, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it. So I was fearless in that way. Like I think people don't get fearless by accident.
Yeah.
You have to say, okay, I'm going to try that. One of my favorite things when I'm coaching people is to say, try it for a year. If you don't like it, don't do it anymore. But be conscious, wake up, pay attention to what you're doing, how you're walking through your day, what's coming out of your mouth. So many people, I hate how much harshness there is in our world. And coming to Kansas City, there's a beautiful loveliness. I just love it here because there's this warmth.
Yeah.
And you feel it the minute you get here, and it's continuous.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why there's like the stereotype of the Midwest, like, you know, being nice, and it's because it's based in fact. I mean, it simply is. And so, you know, as far as the teaching goes, that's something for me. Like when I say I don't want to be a manager, or I don't want to be a leader, I enjoy having like telling those stories, having those conversations, because for me, the way that I learned, whether it was cars, whether it was mortgages, because I had a conversation with somebody, and somebody who had the experience like poured into me. I mean, Rick is a perfect example of that, but there have been other people like over the years, and so I feel a responsibility, you know, and I'm sure you both do, when you see somebody starting a process or something that you're familiar with, you want to help them, because I had advantages by mentors pouring into me, and I find that that's extremely satisfying. And it's actually sort of played into, you know, when I work with realtors, sometimes I work with realtors that don't have as much sales experience as I do. And I think about the advantages that I had from having, you know, worked with you, having Peter, Randy, different things like that. And so I want to try to give back in that regard, because it is satisfying to see people grow. Am I right?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
So it's really interesting how, I mean, when I say teacher, then I think, and purpose, when you say what's your purpose, but once you discover your purpose, you have, in my teaching that I will do, I also think that you have to put down the three legs like a stool. What are the behaviors or the skills that you have that will support that purpose?
Yeah.
And you said you love people. Well, you can't do what you do. If you were an introvert and you never wanted to leave the house, it would be hard to be a mortgage broker.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting? Those people end up in this field, just like they end up. Isn't that? I'm always amused when you see somebody in a business or in some sort of endeavor, and you're like, how did that even happen?
Somebody told them they'd be good at it,
Yeah.
and they didn't look elsewhere.
But then when if you come across those people, and you know they've had 15, 20-year career. And I find that encouraging, because it's to some degree success is just tied to like staying in the game.
Yes.
Stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to literally like be doing it long
Absolutely.
enough for like it to just sort of work. Now for me, I want instant gratification. I want instant affirmation. You know, that was one of the rough things going from the car business to mortgages, because, you know, in the car business, hour and a half later, shaking hands, everybody's happy. Here, you know, I gotta have a conversation with them. Hey, I'll do the application, and I'm sitting there for 15 minutes. Like, why haven't you done this yet? It's because they're living their lives, right? They got other stuff to do, and so I'm amped up all the time. I'm naturally having to like dial back. And you know, when I was talking about getting to know Kansas City, like now I have the space where but not just Kansas City. I find that I have like other passions and other interests. And so I know for you, you talked about like drumming. That's something since you left. That's, I mean,
Yeah, I couldn't have done that while I was in the game. I
Yeah.
think, there wouldn't have been the mental bandwidth. I think I
Yeah.
would have, my time would have been up. I needed more time to reset. But, interesting thing about teaching that I didn't know when I got into it, I had a lot of fear. Not of public speaking. I'm pretty comfortable there. I don't mind getting in front of a crowd. My wife always used to tease, is there going to be a microphone? Well, then he'll be there. But it was more of did I really know what I thought I knew?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go into a room full of 30 general managers that are running dealerships or that have just got promoted to run dealerships. And I'm going to educate them on how to do it the right way. And I tell them it's easy to cheat.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of success stories out there one day and the next day they're in jail. And so to do it right, that's a whole different game.
Yeah.
And that you've got to, be in it to win it the right way. And then when I finally realized that, you know what, I was raised right in the business.
Yeah.
I take a lot of, pride in the companies that I worked for. I thought they were great companies, the Hendrick Automotive Group, Group 1 Automotive. Those are, even the privately held, the Munganess family in St. Louis. Those were great people and great companies. So I had a really fortunate career that I worked for high integrity companies.
Yeah.
A lot of demands, yeah, but they never made me feel like I needed to go in the deep side of the, dark side. And I
Yeah.
never did. And so to me, that was when we won, which we won a lot, that made it twice as fulfilling.
Yeah. And having had the benefit to work for the same organizations, having worked for you, I can say the same thing. And it's interesting because when I talk to people and I tell them what I used to do, I actually had somebody, a realtor once be like, I mean, you're just like a used car salesman. What do I even, and it was like sort of like a derogatory thing. And I think, really I was prepared to do this job better, but I think that being on the front lines with people in a contentious situation, right? Because everybody who goes into a dealership thinks you're a crook, and you have to sort of figure out a way to serve them, serve the company. Everybody has to win. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to. And so I feel like I was actually fortunate to like come up in that environment. But prior to that, so I didn't flip burgers or anything like that, or do work outside when I was a kid. My dad made me officiate youth sports. So like 15 years old, I was like umpiring, refereeing, like adult church week, all this type of stuff. I was like ejecting like business leaders in the Springfield community from like youth basketball games. And I was like, I just basically have been getting yelled at, up until the time I don't really get yelled at in mortgages. It's a different thing. Most of the time I'm not face to face with somebody, so they can just like ghost me, I guess, if they don't like what I'm saying. But I will say, I think that the being put in a situation where I have to like be face to face with people, talk to people, that type of stuff, obviously that's a lot of energy for me, but that's, that's where it's at. That's where it's all communication, right? It's all interacting with people. And I get nervous sometimes when I think about the generations behind me, just how much they like are on their devices and the impact that it has on how people interact. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a responsibility that comes along with, I like the way that at our age we look backwards and we say, okay, we appreciate that. That's what's missing from the next generation, because the people that are on their devices right now they barely even know history. Like if you ask them about World War I, or you ask them things that, I saw on TV as a kid with the Vietnam War, they have no clue what relevance that even means. So we are shifting into a new place where it's only about now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of frightening to me, because I love America and what we stand for and who we are and the values that we have. So I think as long as we can hopefully impart the values, like honesty and integrity being the baseline, like you have to operate your life from that place first. And then whatever you decide to do in life, you can start adding on to your support system, the things that will keep you alive no matter if you change. It's so funny. I used to hear a joke all the time, and when I lived in California, that they would say, if you have a resume that says you had 10 jobs in 16 years, in Boston, they would call you unpredictable. In California, they would call you experienced.
Yeah.
So it's everybody's perception, which why you can't put your faith in other people's perception. You really have to dig deep to see who you are,
Yeah.
what is your DNA, and what can you have your purpose tied to. It might change 5 times in your lifetime. I look at life like a series of chapters. It's
Yeah.
like just another chapter and another chapter and another chapter. And a part of that is having not been attached to a family necessarily. I have a very unconventional scenario,
Yeah.
and I see what it is. But that's why the old Mae West statement where she said, "The world is my husband,"
Yeah.
because I have so many wonderful friendships from coast to coast.
Yeah.
And it's my responsibility if I want that to feel like family.
Yeah.
So I think having that honesty, integrity, and connection.
Yeah.
If we can just have the next generation realize the value of that, then I don't care if they know history. I don't care how they dress,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and it's funny because there are some of those things, like how you dress, like appearance. Like, I mean, I remember, 20 years ago, I would have to wear long sleeve shirts if I had tattoos. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that changes. I think that, the devices, the technology, none of that's going anywhere, right? And so I think it sort of shows how important it is one-to-one, with our children, the people that we are mentors to, and so I have, I don't really, you talk about family, like my friends are my family, I mean, I have, I have, a sister, I've got, an aunt, that type of stuff, and it's fine, but they're spread out throughout the country, and what's happened is my family are the people here in
Yes.
Kansas City, and that I've come close to, and I think that it's important that we, continue to interact with each other, that we're honest with each other, we're straightforward with each other, because all the noise from the devices, and again, younger generations, I mean, that's how you're going to learn. That's how you're going to make an impact.
Yes, for me, I think I think back to like when I started to mentally develop, I'll call it. You had school, and we were taught the same basic things time in, time out. But it was reading.
Yeah.
It was reading, and and whether it was like the Chronicles of Narnia, back when I was really young, but took me to a different place and where I could envision things. And then when you start to like dream or think about what you can do or become, you need to have that imagination.
Yeah.
And I'm really concerned that today's, and I won't even call it today's youth, I'll just say society is being pummeled with what we want them to think.
Yeah.
And they're not coming up with their own things. They're taking, oh, that's a good idea, I'm going to do that. Oh, that's cool, I'm going to do that. And they don't really know that. An hour ago, they weren't even thinking about that. And so there's really no planning to the next stage of life. It's day to day, and the devices are starting to like create their mindsets for them, and that's dangerous, I think. And it's like, so it's important that for me, like even with our grandkids, I mean, they're getting tablets to play on at 3 years old.
Oh man, I think about when I was giving those to my kids now, and I'm like, oh goodness, I wish I had not. I wish I had not done that.
So just timing and controls and things like that, but trying to get them back into those core things of reading and being their own person.
Yeah.
And believing in their own abilities, and and not having fear. Mel Robbins wrote that book, The 5-Second Rule. That was
Yeah.
a book that when I read that, I was like, man, that book hit me pretty hard, because it's like how many times we think of something and before we can even take a second thought, we've switched it off.
Oh yeah. So we've had at our at Fountain Mortgage, we did an event with a comedian, and we flew in, and he had this whole thing, and he was like, one of the negative things, one of the worst things that happened about like the whole stigma with cigarettes is that he talked about his dad. His dad would be arguing with somebody or whatever, and he'd go out and he'd like smoke a cigarette. And in that period of time, he would decide, is it really worth like, kicking this guy's ass? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it is, but it is interesting because everything comes at us so fast anymore. And so we don't have really any time, and we're being programmed to not really have any time, like just alone in our thoughts. And so because at any given, I mean, I can be watching a race, I can be watching a game, but I'm also like texting 3 or 4 different friends, or I'm like looking and scrolling, and I find myself like I have to be like, I'm gonna throw my phone. I'm watching a football game. This is like the best way to spend a Sunday, and I'm on my phone. And I think it's just very difficult because I think like society and our culture is just we're constantly being marketed to. We're all profit centers. I've said that before, and it's just it's just not natural. And for us, okay, so there was a period of time before the devices for us, but there's a lot of people that it's just been a part of them.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think about if I had to go, if I wanted to like take you out, I would have to like walk up to you. Hey, I'm Robert, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to go to dinner? Do you want to do something? You want to hang out or whatever? If you said no, that happened in real time, potentially in front of like other people. And I had to sort of like deal with that and like build back. And when I think about my children, I think about what are the tough things that they actually have to sort of build back. And when you talk about, just having the time to like think about something, it's very difficult to have the time to process about anything.
However, on the flip of that, if they have the right mindset, if they want to learn, if they want to achieve, they have all the power in the world at their fingertips to do that with. And then, what a great thing it can be.
Yeah.
If it's channeled the right way. I started doing this crazy stuff where I'm like blocking and like reporting everything that I don't want to see, just to see if the algorithm will take it away from me.
Yeah.
Because I'm tired of it. And it's like, I still want plenty of stuff, don't get me wrong, but I want the stuff that I want. And I don't want the stuff that they want me to have. And so I think that's where I'm trying to define that. And so when I got
And this
off,
is on LinkedIn?
no, when I got off, so like I barely post anything. I'm on LinkedIn and X, right? Those are the two that I'm still
Those
on.
are crazy extremes, but
Yeah, well,
No,
X.
they
X,
are the
X,
extremes.
X,
right?
honestly, X has become my news source, and I purposefully follow people that I'm not a fan of.
really,
Yeah.
it's probably all the people that I'm following because I am fans of them.
Yeah, I know. We are opposite politically, but that's cool. I mean, we're still friends.
Right, it takes all kinds to make a world.
That's right. It takes all kinds to make the world go around. But it's like, I think it's because I don't want one place to tell me what the other side's view is. I want to hear it from both sides and come up with my own conclusion. So that was a really important step for me.
Yeah.
Because some of them I just, I get like frustrated when I read them, but then I'm like, okay, that's this 50% of the country is that way, or this 50%, and that's fine. I mean, I think it's, again, that doesn't make it wrong. It's what, everything's faster today.
Yeah.
Everything's faster. We were talking before we came on the podcast about how you look at the sitcom stars of the 70s, and they look really old when they were 40. But the way they lived back then, that's the way it was. People didn't exercise regularly, and the smoking was a big thing, and
Right.
and having a nightcap or a highball every night was normal.
And 3 martini lunches.
Yeah, 3 martini lunches and all that stuff.
All the car dealers.
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah.
Pack the
Don't
old
even
beak
go.
full
Let's
of the
not go
booger
down
sugar.
that road. All right. I mean, I started in the car business in the '80s, and smoking in the building. There's just drinking on all the holidays. That stuff was normal back then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Sort of hate that I missed it to
But
some extent.
what wasn't normal back then? 14-year-old millionaires.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is such, everybody expects everything now, which, right, I mean, I just said, I'm the same way, but there are very few things where there is like forced, like patient, like structural patience, structural reflection, unless you just make a point of doing it. And so I was talking to somebody the other day about running. I have headphones on, and she's like, you need to take your headphones out. I'm like, why would I do that? Because then running would just be, it would really suck, right? At least I'm listening to something I want to listen to. And she's like, I figure out so many things, I process so many things, I work through so many things without the distraction. And I am never without music, but it's got me thinking maybe I should spend some time like that.
Well, you mentioned having that time. So the reason I'm an early riser, because I need that time.
Yeah.
I need to reflect a lot. I mean, it's just something that energizes me. So I go downstairs, I make a cup of coffee, and I sit down at 3 o'clock in the morning. And the first 30, 45 minutes, it's purely reflection. That's really, what is today going to bring? What do I need to be better at? What do I need to focus on? Those types of things. And I think it's helping me a lot.
All right. Well, Suzanne, what do you need to be better at?
Patience is one thing, because technology is a double-edged sword, right? I love it when it works for me, and I cry when it doesn't. So it's really difficult sometimes. But I get compliments from my son who says, Mom, you're light years ahead because I'm fearless. I just want to move into that zone. I only offer up so much resistance,
Yeah.
and then I have to, I'll go with the flow. I cannot keep resisting. And what we were just talking about a minute ago about things coming at us so fast, that's a choice too. You can excuse yourself from it. You can go for a walk. You can take your extra time. I'm an early riser too for exactly the same reason, because I don't have time to formulate those imaginations of the big, beautiful world that waits ahead. And I'm so excited about it. But if you don't take time to feel it and not just think about it, because those two things put
Yeah.
together, when you organize your heart and your mind together, that's a powerful tool to create the life you want.
Right.
And that's why I say, and again, I was going to just, as a side note, one of the reasons I purposely got my son into skateboarding was to get him outside and have him he had a little quarter pipe on
Yeah.
the run-down tennis court. So he was able to use that, half pipe or quarter pipe. And that really spurred him into falling in love with something. Now drive him all over Rhode Island to go to these nasty, old rundown couches in the indoor skate park. And I loved every minute of it. I thought, this is real. These kids and the little 5-year-olds with their helmets cocked on sideways, and the big kids letting them go first and have a turn. Those are the environments that I seek out now in my life, because that's real life.
So can I talk about what I've been wanting to talk about this whole time, which is the 10-year bond